With the release of the new Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer, I wanted to do a little segment on interesting facts you didn't know about Ghostbusters. Now I'm going to try and do a trailer breakdown and review here soon, but I thought it would be interesting to break down some things you didn't know about Ghostbusters. Now, Ghostbusters brought the paranormal into the mainstream. It made ghosts cool, right? Up until then, ghosts were kind of like this taboo subject, and I think that sort of familiarized people with the supernatural, and it made it interesting. It made it fun. It made it kind of comical, and it was so it was neat for this show to come out and kind of break that bridge on people being a little skeptical of the paranormal. And I think people became more accepting after that show, right? Well, I guess this is interesting. 10 years before Ghostbusters had came out, there was a live action show called Ghostbusters. And it was basically this live action comedy horror show about these two guys and a gorilla that traveled through time and space to fight ghosts and the supernatural, which sounds familiar, is kind of like Ghostbusters. And apparently Paramount had to acquire the name from this live action TV show, which wasn't made by Paramount. It had no association with the Ghostbusters movie, but they had to acquire that name for the Ghostbusters movie, right? And then when Ghostbusters became popular and then they released an animated television show, animated cartoon show, this same company that did the original Ghostbusters show said, you know, we're going to release a cartoon too to kind of feed off the success of this movie. And they released it literally like 5 days before the Dan Aykroyd's Ghostbusters released its animated cartoon. And so you had these two animated cartoons, both called Ghostbusters, that were very similar. And people actually thought that the animated cartoon that was Ghostbusters was the authentic Ghostbusters show. And people were getting very confused. And I actually remember watching this show when I was a kid, and I thought it was actually the Dan Aykroyd's Ghostbusters, and it was connected to that. I didn't realize it was a completely different Ghostbusters. But a lot of people don't know that. And I mean, it's like I said, it confused me when I watched the cartoon because I thought I was watching actual Ghostbusters. But, that's just one of the interesting facts about Ghostbusters. Now, Dan Aykroyd conceived this idea originally for him and Jim Belushi. But Jim Belushi, rest in peace, passed. And so then he approached Chevy Chase to play Jim Belushi's character, who would later become Bill Murray's character, right? And Peter Venkman. But Chevy Chase said, I don't really like this idea for this movie. I don't think it's going to be a hit. I don't think it's going to be successful. I really don't want to be in this. So then Dan Aykroyd approached Bill Murray, who accepted the role and became the Peter Venkman we know today, which is kind of interesting. It could have been Chevy Chase. It could have been Jim Belushi, which would have been kind of cool to see, how that would have went. We definitely love Bill Murray. We love Peter Venkman and his role he plays as Peter Venkman. But it would have been interesting to see that connection between Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, and also, Jim Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. And then as well, the part of Winston Zeddemore, originally it was offered to Eddie Murphy, who declined because at that time he was doing Beverly Hills Cop, which went on to be a big hit and a big success. So I don't think he necessarily made the wrong decision by turning it down. He just had a bigger role, and he was busy with that. But Dan Aykroyd, when he conceived the idea, originally he wanted this movie to be about like the same Ghostbusters live action show where these guys would travel through time and space and fight ghosts and demons and things like that. But the studio basically was like, it would cost a lot of money to produce this movie and all the special effects. This would take so much money to do, and they really didn't like that idea. They wanted to make it more down to earth and seem more realistic. So they put the setting in New York City and changed sort of the whole script, which a lot of people don't realize. But this movie that originally Dan Aykroyd had conceived came true in the video game that was produced in, I want to say, late 2000s, early 2000s. And it is basically the sequel to the second Ghostbusters movie. And it is the movie that originally Dan Aykroyd had written to be the Ghostbusters we would have seen instead of the one we actually got. And it is the sequel to the second one because it was sort of meant to be the first one. And so basically he made two movies before it that were like prequels leading up to the idea that he originally had. Now, and what's interesting about that is, he found a way to still actually make this movie and make a sequel. And so a lot of people say, well, there's no Ghostbusters 3. This is the Ghostbusters 3 that we've been looking for. But technically the video game is the Ghostbusters 3. So this would be like the Ghostbusters 4, which there was an animated Ghostbusters cartoon. And I think it was Extreme Ghostbusters. And I apologize if I'm wrong on the title. But this was basically the same concept as Ghostbusters Afterlife, where they pass the torch on to younger children to this younger generation of Ghostbusters. And it's essentially what Ghostbusters Afterlife is. And so I wonder if this is kind of going to be like Extreme Ghostbusters, like the cartoon from the 90s. So it'll be interesting to see, how it turns out and if it's at all relevant to that cartoon. So that's some interesting facts about Ghostbusters. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Parahan.